What's up, Canes baseball fans? This is the CanesInSight podcast powered by Anage Arlene Accident Attorneys, 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Tough weekend for the Canes. We said it was going to be a telling weekend, and it told us the wrong thing. But we got Javi Salas, Mr. Perfect himself, the newly engaged one, here to break it all down. First, a word from some of the best friends Canes baseball has and some of the best friends that CanesInSight has.
This episode of the Canes Insight podcast is brought to you by our friends at Sala Astorita & Cox, a boutique law firm focusing on securities regulatory matters, broker-dealer and investment advisor regulation, white-collar criminal defense, complex commercial litigation, and securities arbitration and litigation. The firm aggressively represents clients throughout the nation. Contact them now at 561-989-9080. or visit them online at salalaw.com.
We are back, and we are here with Javi Salas, Mr. Perfect himself. We've been breaking down every single weekend on this show, some fun, some not so fun. This is probably the least fun that we've had, but we got to bear through it and figure out what's going on and what can still get fixed. But, man, you said it'd be a show me weekend, and it was a tough one. So just give me the overall impression here of the sweep against Duke.
Definitely a show me weekend. Not the show we wanted to see. 3-1 run losses, which those are gut wrenching as baseball fans, right? You kind of sit through the whole game, and 3 losses at the end of games, right? So we're looking at crunch time losses. On Friday night, walk off win in the 9th, Sunday walk off win in the 11th, Saturday tight ball game, lose by 1 run. Obviously, the Canes find themselves in a quite the predicament. 6-9 in the conference. A team that started off so well, beating Virginia 2 out of 3, beating North Carolina 2 out of 3, 2 top 15 ball clubs, and now we've seen 3 straight series losses. Obviously, the trajectory is a little concerning. More than a little, it's very concerning. Considering we're 30 games into the season, so definitely not the weekend we wanted to see. A tough one for myself, for all the Canes fans. I'm sure everybody in that locker room is just trying to problem solve at this point and get the ship, back on track.
They say fundamentals sort of reveal themselves in close losses or close wins, close games. Lose 3 close games, going to be some fundamental issues. What are some of the things that you saw that can be improved upon from a fundamental standpoint?
Yeah, look, when these one-run games, everything sort of gets magnified, right? When you're hitting the ball out of the yard and everyone's having a great time, the 2, 3, 4 hitters, it seems like what we saw early in the season was the ball was flying out of the park, right? Astronomical rates. You get into conference play tightens up. You're going to see good pitching. You're going to see teams that know that they have to win these series. The ACC's loaded. Another 7 ranked teams as of today in the top 25 poll. The conference from A to Z, there's no easy weekends. So, pitching becomes heightened. Fielding percentage is obviously one of the big barometers of team success. That becomes heightened. Base running, something that we've talked about at length here, becomes heightened. You got 27 outs. You got to protect them, and you got to get them at all costs. And we've just seen this Hurricane ball club, lose these tight games. And we've seen the other side of the coin. They've won the close ones. They've lost the close ones. Unfortunately, the last couple of weeks, we've just seen a decline in the ball club. And I sort of attribute it to a couple of things. You mentioned the fundamentals. Obviously, I know when we had Coach Gutierrez on early on in the season, he mentioned, baseball IQ, getting guys to buy in, understanding how valuable outs are, understanding that the game is won and lost at a, small margins, and the little things magnify themselves. And we've seen that in ACC play. And look, it's definitely unfortunate. It's something you don't want to see, especially at this portion of the season, but it's something they can correct. There's still 15 games left to play. If they want to make a tournament run, they got to do it, right now.
And the offense, we're always talking about the offense. Obviously, it's gone into a different mode here as we got into ACC play. Would you say it's a result of the competition, things that are changing within the offense itself and the players themselves, or what would you attribute the differences from what the offense we saw non-conference play to what we're seeing in the ACC play?
Yeah, look, the name of the game in baseball is sample size, right? We talk about it all the time. Is once you start getting at bats, you start seeing reps, you start seeing the hot and cold zones of all these hitters. Everybody has that data. It's widely, disseminated. I'm sure, Duke's game plan mirrored Clemson's game plan. Like, the key to beating the Hurricanes ball club is keeping him in the yard. You got to keep Daniel Cavani in the yard. You got to keep Blake Sear in the yard, and you got to keep Jason Torres in the yard. And we've seen that in ACC play, right? We have 16 home runs as a team in conference play, over 30 in non-conference play. So what does that tell me? Teams are scouting. Their scouting reports are much better. They know how to pitch to these guys. They know their weaknesses, and I think it's a testament to how tough the conference is. The ACC pound for pound is probably number one, number two conference in all the Power Five conferences. So it's a little bit of both. We've seen the offense struggle. We've seen the pitching obviously get better in conference play, and we just haven't seen the same level of intensity and rigor that we saw early on in the season from this ball club. And unfortunately, right now we're 6-game skid. They got to right the ship tomorrow. They got to right the ship against FAU.
Yeah, we talked about midweek games for so long, and that's obviously coming back to bite them in terms of the overall record. But now, it's a tough slate to get to where you need to be by winning ACC games. What do you see as the record Miami needs to pull off in order to get to the tournament?
I mean, realistically, you look at the conference, and Miami's sitting at second to last in the Coastal, right above Pitt. Obviously, we played Carolina, we played Virginia. We still have Virginia Tech left on our schedule. 3 games against them, 3 games against Louisville, 3 games against Pitt, and 3 against Georgia Tech. Obviously, there's some winnable games there. I mean, you got to think you got to take care of business against Pitt. You got to sweep Pitt. Got to take 2 out of 3 against Virginia Tech and Louisville, and that Georgia Tech series again. You got to find a way to win it. So I think there is a path for Miami, and I think that should be the only thing the coaching staff and everybody in that locker room is thinking about is we got to win on Tuesday. We got to win, a game on Friday. Every single game is must win from here on out. But you got to figure out, first of all, I think the identity of the ball club. What exactly are we, right? Because early in the year we talked about, this team was hitting the ball all over the place. We kept on harping on the pitching was lagging behind the hitting. And we've seen the starting pitching make a U-turn, D. Like we've seen Gage Zielbin, out of this world in conference play. Rafe Schlesinger's definitely held his own. Herrick Hernandez had a great start on Sunday. So the starting pitching has more than held its own. That middle relief, that late game, the crunch time that I alluded to earlier, that's been sort of the weak spot for Miami. They still haven't figured out who exactly the stoppers are. We know that Nick Roberts, our 9th inning guy, we just haven't figured out who's going to get him the ball in the middle of the game. So I think there's a sort of an identity crisis now for Miami, and those guys got to look in the mirror. Some leaders got to figure out, hey, what kind of team do you want to be remembered for? Like, do you want to be the team that turned it around midway through the season, or the team that started off great, hit some troubles, and then kind of sputtered out?
Offensively, Blake Sear didn't play on Saturday and Sunday. We're not going to speculate on that, but obviously, all eyes are on Daniel Cuvée. I don't think anybody expected him to maintain the pace he had the first couple of weeks throughout the season, but it's been a rough go at times in the conference. So what are you seeing from him, and what does he need to do to get back on track? Maybe not, again, the pace that was unrealistic early, but just to reestablish himself as one of the top freshmen in the country.
I saw some good things on Sunday from Cuvée. Hit the ball hard a couple times, had a big RBI in the 11th inning, which, put the Canes up by 3 there. Back to my point about pitching in conference, right? Like the book is out on these guys. Everybody knows, hey, Daniel Cuvée is a threat. Daniel Cuvée is not going to beat us. And number 3, Daniel Cuvée can hit the ball out to any part of the field, right? So it's like, how am I as a pitching coach, as a pitching staff, going to approach a guy like Daniel Cuvée? Well, if Blake Sear's not in the lineup, which we saw on Saturday and Sunday, it's a little bit easier to pitch around Daniel Cuvée. It's a little bit easier to say, hey, let's throw him a couple, fastball up, breaking ball down in the dirt, which is what we've seen. They're changing eye levels on Cuvée, making him, be more selective at the plate. It's tough to keep that pace that he was at. Obviously, he started out, hitting the ball out of the yard at a ridiculous pace. He's cooled off a little bit, but he's still Daniel Cuvée, right? He's still the guy at the middle of that lineup that everyone's circling and saying, this guy's not going to beat us. This guy's not going to be the guy that, hits the ball out of the park, that hits one over the scoreboard, that can hit, the 2-run home run, 3-run home run. We're seeing Daniel Cuvée, up to bat with nobody on base, which is exactly what you want. Hit a solo home run, go for it. So pitching is tough in the conference. Everybody's got a scouting report. I think for Daniel Cuvé's sake, he's probably, hoping Blake Sear's in that lineup again tomorrow and can provide some protection so he can see some more fastballs. But look, he's a freshman. He's only going to get better. This is probably, in the terms of his development, this is probably good for him to understand that, hey, it's not going to be, sunshine and rainbows all the time. Like this is a really tough conference. This is a really tough league. I'm going to get pitched to differently, and that's because I'm such a good baseball player.
In terms of you, I mean, look, you were on some great teams, but when you struggle, it wasn't all, smooth sailing. Maybe it wasn't this, but there were tough times. What's JD saying to his team as far as keeping them on track? Like, you're really at the low point of your season, which I think it's fair to say this is to this point of the season. What's the message from a good coach?
Look, the message has to be one of, there's optimism because there is 30 games left to play, right? There is a slate in front of us of baseball games. We're halfway through the season, but there's still wins out there, right? It's a tough conference that I keep mentioning. There's going to be chances for RPI to jump. So you have to, play the long game here, but there has to be an intense focus on fundamentals, on doing the little things right. And I think it's kind of like the boring things in baseball that people, everyone wants to see the sexy home runs or the strikeouts, but it's the base running, it's the fielding, it's, not no walks, it's the shutdown innings. It's the things that don't necessarily end up in a box score that win or lose you some of these ball games. And I think, we've been on the wrong side of that for a couple weeks now. We've seen, base running become an issue. The fielding percentage is towards the bottom of the conference. So it's the non-sexy things that win the games, and it's the boring baseball teams that find their way to Omaha, that find their way to super regionals every single year. And I think there seems to be a renewed focus on that. You need to, first of all, you need to wipe the locker room clean. It's like, hey guys, we're not going to go back and beat Duke. That series is over with. We're not going to go back and beat Clemson. We're not going to go back and beat FAU. Like, we've kind of hit this point in our season, and yes, it's a low point, and there's only one way to go, and it's up. I don't think there's anywhere else that this team can possibly go. Obviously, there's not a lot of times you can say a Miami baseball team is under 500 overall record-wise and under 500 in the conference. So, I mean, there has to be a sense of optimism. It's a young team, right? So you want to make sure that these guys understand there is baseball left to be played. It's not the end of the world, but there needs to be a sense of urgency to get better and to want to improve.
So I should have probably asked this earlier. The hidden ball trick leading to a balk in a critical moment at the end of this game on Sunday. What happened there?
It was one of those plays where, the ball gets hit into the outfield. Dorian catches it at second. And, I've been a part of some hidden ball tricks at the, professional level. Usually just get a look from the person who has the ball that he's going to hold on to it. For whatever reason, I guess, Ashton Crowther didn't clear the mound completely. He had 1 foot in the dirt, which in college, you're not allowed to be anywhere on the surface of the mound. Dorian goes and tags a guy at second base. It was a weird play because you saw it in slow motion. The second base umpire didn't necessarily see it. It was kind of one of those things where they all conferred. I don't know where the call came from. They didn't review the play necessarily, but one of the umpires said that Crowther was still on the mound area. That led to the balk, run scores. It was just really unfortunate play. It was a heads up play, but ended up turning out on the wrong side of the coin for the Canes because he probably was out if Crowther is off the mound completely. It turns out being a run score for Duke, and then we all know what happened after that. They get the base hit to win the game.
Is there some sort of set communication between the second baseman and the pitcher? Like, how's that communicated?
It's one of those things that might just be a look. I mean, they fooled the Duke runner, right? They fooled everybody because the Duke coaches didn't know, the umpire didn't know that Dorian had the ball. So it was a great hit and ball trick, right? It just not execute it to perfection, right? It was one of those things where Crowther has to know, hey, I can't be on the surface. I need to completely clear. Dorian tags the guy. If there needs to be a review, there's a review. But one of those things where, good intentions, just bad execution. And, it's tough in those situations. You don't want to give away runs. And I felt like at the end of the game on Sunday, Miami has a 7-1 lead, and then they have a 10-7 lead. They managed to, those leads evaporate quickly in a span of an inning. So, you definitely go back to the drawing board. Obviously, the hidden ball trick is just a small portion of that comeback for Duke, but you want to circle those two comebacks and say that this can't happen again.
FAU has been a thorn in Miami's side this season. What can Miami do to reverse what the trend has been against FAU this year?
Yeah, look, I mean, they were a thorn in my side in my career. I certainly faced FAU a bunch, and they got the best of me a couple times. It's one of those games where, people talk about midweeks, and, you don't necessarily, and I don't want to speak for this year's club, but the park is not going to be packed. It's a Tuesday night. It's one of those games where you kind of got to bring your own energy, your own mojo. And, the good ball clubs understand that midweeks are what's going to be the difference between hosting or, not playing in the, field of 64. So it's really important that this team just comes out. You got to erase what's happened. You got to come out really energetic tomorrow, really focused. There's got to be a rigor and discipline about the way they go about their business tomorrow. And, you have to want to beat FAU. They've beat us twice. It's been one of those things where, I don't want to say that FAU has no business beating us. They are a good ball club. They've been a good ball club. They've made it to regionals. They've played in a super regional, as a matter of fact. But they got to win tomorrow. Miami's got to figure out the way to turn the ship around, and I think tomorrow's a great opportunity for that.
Shortstop position, we talked about it last week. Urso had some success this week. How do you think that position shakes up?
It's been kind of a revolving door, D, and it's one of those positions where, again, it's one of those boring positions where you want to have a shortstop that makes the routine plays. He's going to be the captain of that defense. It's been one of those things where I think JD and Coach Fencer are kind of just riding the hot hand, whoever can, provide a couple hits. And we're just looking to get something out of that 9 spot in the lineup. And it really anything, right? We've seen both Urso and Jimenez have some good moments, some moments where they've definitely struggled. But at this point, it's ride the hot hand. We saw Urso finish the series on Sunday with his play at short. So I don't know who they're thinking of, moving forward. Right now, it's just 1A, 1B, and whoever's hot keeps playing. And, hopefully one of those guys just sets himself apart just a little bit more than the other one and can be a, consistent figure in that lineup.
With Nick Robert, he's pitched a ton, got 5 wins on the year, been used a lot.
Yeah.
Doesn't have the typical closer profile as far as velocity, but has been very effective pitcher. Miami's most effective relief pitcher this year as a freshman. Where do you see him ultimately as a pitcher? Is he a starter, setup guy, or a closer like he is now?
I think he's going to have the opportunity to do whatever he wants. I'm sure that, when the season ends, Coach Arteaga, Coach Gutierrez will have a plan in place. And he has thrown a lot. And they've put him in some situations where, they've asked a lot of a freshman, right? I remember, when I was a senior, Brian Garcia took over that closer role, and it was, he never let go of it. He took off, and that was, his career, obviously one of the best closer in Miami history. But Nick Roberts going to have the opportunity to sort of chart his own course. I think his profile is more as a starter. I think he did that at the prep level. I think, he has the ability, like I said, to do either one. Right now, it's just he's a freshman being thrust into some really, really tough situations on Friday night. He gets the ball, error behind him, loads the bases, gets 2 outs, almost gets out of it, gives up, the walk-off hit. Yesterday, we saw, obviously Nick Robert struggle a little bit with his command. I think more than anything, he was trying to find the zone, walked in a run, hit a batter, run scored. So, we're going to see Nick Roberts really good. He's a really good pitcher. He has a tremendous career in front of him. I think personally, his profile is more as a starter. He's a big guy, got a good breaking ball, has, I think he has a pretty good changeup too, something that you can develop, that 3-pitch mix. But ultimately, it's going to be up to him if he wants to be a closer, if he wants to be a starter. He'll have both opportunities, I think, at his disposition.
And just towards this point of the season, you being a pitcher, whether you're a guy like a reliever that's getting a lot of work like Robert or one of the 4 starters, where's your body at this point of the year?
Yeah, look, everybody's nicked up. I think, Nick Robert coming off of a high school season. High schools play 20, 25 games, on average. If you make it deep into, your state title run, maybe you play a couple more games. But he's already surpassed that. He's probably thrown just as much or more than he did as a high school senior. So, you're definitely hitting a wall, and it's you got to figure out how to break through that. I know, Miami's got a great strength training program. They got state-of-the-art facilities. Like, you got to take care of your body, but you're also learning how to take care of your body. He's a freshman. He's never been through this before. He's never been through a college season. He's never been in a closer role on a Power 5 team in the toughest conference in America, right? So he's learning. It's a learning experience. It's great for development, man. I mean, look, you talk about struggling as a freshman. What do you come back? Like, I want to know, what does Nick Roberts see next year, right? Like, he's had a great year. He's been put in some unbelievable situations, has come out on top, has seen what success looks like at Miami. So, like, I'm sure he's going to go into that offseason and be like, I know how to take care of my body. I know how to do this. I remember I struggled in this situation because my body felt like XYZ. How do I get better? How do I improve? And these are all things that, if you don't suffer a little bit, you don't realize how good you really have it on the other side. So I fully anticipate Nick Robert to be, a force for Miami next year.
This weekend, don't want to look past FAU, but we're not playing, so we can do it. FSU playing very good baseball, much improved from last year.
Yeah.
Preview that series for me, what Miami needs to do.
Yeah, look, I think FSU looked very similar to what Miami looks like, last year, what Miami looks like this year, right? Link Jarrett comes in from Notre Dame, kind of purges the program. They struggled a whole bunch last year, goes into the portal, has a really good recruiting offseason, and they're the number 9 team in the country, right? They've, for all intents and purposes, one of the best teams in the conference, up in the top 5 in RPI. It's going to be a tough test. It's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series with a national game on Thursday on ACC Network. So, look, if Miami ever wanted an opportunity to right the ship, it's this week, right? You have 4 games, in-state rival games. You got FAU on Tuesday, then you go to Florida State. Tallahassee is going to be a packed house, hostile environment. If there's ever a time for a team to come together, it wasn't going to be in Durham. I'll tell you that. It's going to be this weekend in Florida State. They're going to be, the odds stacked against them. I'm guarantee you no one's going to pick Miami to win this series. So, I mean, why not, right? I think, I'm obviously speaking with a very optimistic tone, and I think that, like I said, there's a lot of ball left in front of them. This weekend was tough. It was one of those weekends where you look back and you're like, man, this is left a lot to be desired. They left a lot out there. As a fan watching the games, it was tough to see us, lose 3 1-run games. So look, if I was a head coach, if I was a leader on that team, I'd be like, guys, we have 4 opportunities this week where we can make people forget what happened in Durham. We can, turn the ship around. You win a series against Florida State, things look a little bit better. The fans are going to be in a much better spot. I think the boards would be a little bit, more jolly and stuff like that. So I think, look, Florida State, it's a great environment. I love playing at Dick Howser Stadium. They're going to pack it up. you're gonna hear the chop. You're gonna hear these guys all jacked up. There's gonna be some bitter, trash talk between the two dugouts. There's no love lost here. More so, I think, than Florida, especially in that environment. So I look forward to it. I think it's a great opportunity. I think let's really see, let's find out what this ball club is made of.
Well, listen, I hope we have a happier podcast next
Yeah.
week. Like you said, it could turn around quick given the opponent and all the other things besides just the wins and losses when Miami and FSU play. So, Javi, man, appreciate you. Thank you, Salas, Astorita, and Cox. Thank you for your support as always. And let's go Canes.
Thanks, Steve. Go Canes.